Hello, this is Yezin, and welcome to Workshop 6. Workshop 6, we're going to talk about analyzing data using tables. Tables is very important in Excel. It is a very powerful feature, and believe it or not, it's quite different than using just cell ranges or named ranges. So today we're going to talk about tables, and the objective of this workshop is to be able to know how to deal with tables, subtotals, how to develop and customize pivot table, very important feature of Excel that you're going to use a lot, and how to use and customize pivot charts. In general speaking, in any business environment, as a business analyst, as a financial analyst, marketing analyst, and so on, you're going to be provided with a raw data, and you're going to apply a certain kind of let's say formatting, processing, and so on to create information. So the raw data is actually the facts, the numbers. By itself, it's really not meaningful. It doesn't deliver a great value. So your purpose or your position or your objective is to apply certain processing and to apply certain functions to create a meaningful data for your business, for your boss, for your employer, and so on. Normally we deal with data. We might apply a lot of stuff on it, as a trial and error, and then we'll try to go back to the original data, and we might lose it, and so on. So you always have to be careful of keeping the integrity of the data. So maybe a lot of times that you have to create a copy of the worksheet that you're working on, or to keep the original data, the raw data, in a separate workbook and create a different one to apply the manipulation to the data that you're trying to do to it. Also, make sure to keep data sets separated. Sometimes getting confused or getting two data sets into each other might really end up in a messy results, and it will be hard to modify or solve the problem later on. So let's try to go to one of those exercise files and talk a little bit more about it. Okay. So go into this tab. This is a sub-range. Those are just chunk of data. As you can see, we have names, we have departments, states, hours, rate, wages, location. This is just a sample of a payroll worksheet, and you can see that sometimes what you want, for example, to filter state only. Previously, what we used to do is underneath the home tab, within the editing group, we would go to sort and filter, and then apply for a filter and filter it accordingly, right? So this was one of the ways of doing it. Another thing, you might want to apply totals or stuff like that to this worksheet, and we used to do that by using these functions like the sum, the average, the count, and etc. A good thing to do is to use table instead of cell range. Why? Because it's flexible. Really, when you modify the table, it will be reflected to the formulas and functions that you use in your workbook, so you don't have to worry about it. It's just dealt as an object in Excel. First way to do this is you click anywhere inside that chunk of data, inside that cell range, and then go to the Insert tab, and within the tables group there is table icon. The shortcut, once you hover above it, obviously it shows the shortcut, which is Control+T. So this is another way of doing it. It will create and organize data in a table for you. So once you click on it, the pop-up window will show up to create the table and ask you what are the cell or the cell ranges that you're trying to include in that table. And obviously it shows that although I only clicked on one cell, it included all the adjacent cells next to it. So somehow Excel understands that part, but let's assume that there was a gap and Excel did not really include all that cells you want. You can just simply go and highlight the cells that you want. So you can click on this and highlight all the way to the bottom, right? And then you have the option is whether the first row in that cell range is your header, or does it include headers or not. So in mine, of course, it does. This is very important to differentiate between the header and the body of data. And I will hit OK, and I got my table. Obviously, Excel apply a style to it. You can change the style from the table styles. But what did that show up? Well, once you create that table, Excel show the Table Tools tab, and underneath it there's the design, and you have multiple options over here. For example, you can change the table style. So I'm going to choose this purple color. You have the table style options that, for example, you can see that next to each header, there's an arrow that shows the filter and sorting. So you can sort from A to Z, from Z to A. You also can do custom sort, for example. You can apply text filters, and you can actually choose between like use the graphical the interface to, for example, pick these certain values you want to search, and you want to filter accordingly, like the normal filter, but Excel does it for you without you applying that. So it's by default. Once you create table, you will find those filters, and of course you can always clear the sorting or the filters by just clicking on it again, and it should disappear. So here, obviously there's a filter. I want to remove it. Oh, I removed the whole thing. My bad. Okay, so what if that happened? What if you had filters and then you removed it? You can go back to the design tab, and then there's that filter button over here. You can click on it. It's now great because I disabled it from somewhere else. So I'm going to go back here when I put the filters on. So in the design group, you can show and remove those filters accordingly. What else I want to do? Okay, so banded rows. The banded rows is just show rows in a different colors to help you be able to read the table easily. You can remove this or add it by just clicking on the banded rows. Same thing for columns. You can apply that for columns, and you can apply it for rows and columns at the same time. You can highlight the last column and highlight the first column, and so on. You can add a total row at the bottom of your data or remove it. Here, those options a little bit outside the scope of this workshop. Like you can export the data into a SharePoint or a Visio. Another cool thing is the tools over here. This one is going to summarize the data into a pivot table. So this is one way of creating a pivot table. We're going to talk more about it once we get to that point. Remove duplications, really powerful tools. And a lot of times you will be dealing with data, and the data might have like duplicate entries or duplicate records, and you want to remove it because it will mess up your data and the output that you hoping to get out of it. So you can just click on remove duplicates, and here it will ask you duplication according to what. So let's, for example, as saying like, okay, if I had two people with the same first name and last name, obviously this is duplication. I don't want it to include in my data, so I want to remove it. So simply you can make that the duplication criteria is the first name and last name. So I'm gonna unselect all and then click on the first two, and I will hit OK. And this is what Excel is telling me here is like, well, Excel finds seven duplicates or seven duplicate values and remove them, and I have 35 unique values remain. This is really a very powerful tool and great tool to deal with. Slicer, this is a new addition, came after 2010, after Excel 2010, so in 2007 before this was not included. You can include slicers, and slicer is a graphical filter. Okay, so for example, if I want to filter according to states, I'm going to click on a state and hit OK. And it will show this window, right, that kind of floating in top of my Excel sheet. And I can click on any of the state and it will filter that table accordingly. So if in California, only show California employees, Illinois will only show Illinois, Pennsylvania only show Pennsylvania. If I want to like select two states at a time or more, I can like click on Pennsylvania, hold the control key, and click on California. Now it shows it selects two, right? You can also, for example, click on California, and I want to select like the three states next to each other. So I'll hold the Shift key and click on Illinois, and I will select those three together. Slicer really powerful. Once you create the slicer, Excel will show that slicer tools, which is a new tab, and then you go to the options, and you can see that you can change the style of it. So I can change the style. You can the alignment and so on, the position, the width, the height, and how many columns you want to you want it to show the data in. So for example, if you have so many options, so many like entities, or so many big number of states, for example, you can divide that in multiple columns if it's not shown together. Another thing to go back to our table is you can insert a table name. So I can call this payroll. And once you hit enter, that's now my table is called payroll, and I can really call it from any place and use those Excel files, those Excel cells within the table. I can apply different functions and different formulas to it. The cool thing is when you add a new row to that table, it is included, so you don't have to go and modify it. This is very powerful when you're referring to the table from somewhere else in a function or a formula. And also when you add another column, it updates itself by itself, so Excel understands that part. So this is really the powerful and the power and the strength of a table, and this is why it's recommended to use when you really keep updating the data and also referring to that data in different places like worksheets or workbooks. Really very important and helpful. You can resize your table, and then if you want to reduce the number of cells and so on, so you can change that. Another thing you would want to do, for example, is you create a table, but you want to go back to a set range. So simply you can convert back to a range. So once you click on it, it asks you, would you like to convert the table back to a normal range of cells? You hit yes, and now it's not a table anymore. But it keeps that filter, that style applied. So if you want to get rid of the style again, for example, I want to select all the cells adjacent to each other, I will hold the control button and hit the letter A. I will select the whole portion, and I will go to the clear icon inside the editing group within the home tab. Go to the
short menu over here, and I will click on the clear formats, and it will clear the format for me. So that was one way of creating the table for you. If you want to do another way, is for example, you click anyway within that cell range, and inside the styles group, you can go to format as a table, and once you click on the drop down, it will show you the different styles, so you can create the table and select the style at the same time. So for example, I want to choose this style over here. Again, ask me what are the cell range that I want to include in my table, and if it includes any header or not. Hit OK, and we'll create my table. So a cool thing about the filters over here, so for example, here are the hours, right? If I want, for example, to filter according to number filter, right? So here in the number filter, I want to show employees with a rate greater than $20, for example. So I can go here and say greater than, and I will put is greater than $20, right? And then I hit OK. And now it only show those employees that the rate is greater than $20 per hour. Again, like you can apply multiple filters at the same time. So if, for example, I want those who make more than 20 per hour, and I want them to be in a certain state, so I can go to text filter and equal, for example, go to the equals, and I want to put NY to filter and show only New York's employees, hit OK. Now this is, you can see those are two filters, and you can see that small funnel next to that arrow that shows up means that there is a filter applied over here. And of course, you always can clear the filter by clicking on the clear filter within that drop down menu, and that obviously show the portion of my data. So what is the cool thing about it is, again, I'm gonna just select this portion. So I hit Control A and Control C to copy it. And for example, I want to go to somewhere else, and I want to paste it. And you can see when I copied and pasted, it only brought that portion of data that I filtered accordingly to. So this is really a great thing to do sometimes. Like, you don't want to copy the whole thing, you only want to give like someone a part of your data, so you filter and then you copy that and put it in a different sheet and so on. And when you paste it, doesn't paste as a table, it pastes as a normal cell range. Okay, two good things to learn is how to split cells and combine cells. So a very powerful thing over here is a lot of times you would have like names, and it will be like last name, comma, first name. And sometimes you want to separate them into different columns, right? For whatever reason you want. And a good thing to do that, a good thing that Excel actually has a way to do that for you. So I want to really separate this and put like first name, last name, instead of having them combined with each other. So I'm gonna first of all insert a column here. And what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna click on this column, and I'm gonna go to the data, and there's something called text to columns, right, within the data tool. So I highlighted the column. I went to the data, and then I went to text to columns. Okay, and there are two options here: delimited or fixed width. I'm going to use the first one, which is like where, according to which criteria you're going to separate that those text strings, right? So I know that the separator between the last name and the first name is the comma, so I'm going to click on the comma, and I will unchoose tab, and I will go for next. And you can see that it gives me a preview here. You can see that it separated the first from the last according to that comma.
And then you can also choose what data format you want the column to be saved as. So I'm just gonna keep it as general, or you can put it as a text, really. It doesn't matter much. And you have here multiple options for date and so on. So I'll put it as a text. And here we'll ask where's the destination, how you want to separate these. And I'm gonna just hit finish. It tells me that there's already data here. So I'm just gonna double check, is there really any data in this column? Okay, so just to make sure, I added another column, okay? And let's do this again. So I'm gonna select all those names, and instead of doing that manually, separate the first name from the last name, and go to text to column, have the delimiter, and go to next. I know the delimiter is a comma. I'm gonna go to next. You can see the preview here. And the new tab will be a text. I hit finish, and you can see that it separated the last name from the first name. Really cool, and you can, like, for example, put that last name, right, and here first name. Really cool trick and functionality of Excel that I use a lot. What if it was the opposite? There was last name, first name, and you want to combine these together. A trick that probably most of you know by now is you can use a regular formula. So you can say, well, I have a problem with this keyboard. Somehow it does not type the equal for me. So I'm gonna go here, put the equal. Okay, so what I'm gonna do is I want to choose last name, right? And this is the A4 for me, and then I'll put the ampersand, the and symbol, which is shift number 7. And I got between quotes, I'm gonna put the comma, right? So it will be the last name, comma, and then I will leave, and I will leave a space after that comma. So I'm gonna put, because I'm gonna put the first name after, got the ampersand again, and I'm gonna put the first name and hit enter. And you can see that what Excel did is it concatenate the last name with the first name and put the comma for me. And if I autofill, it will apply this to the rest. But look what happened. Like, okay, so what if I want to delete those 2 columns and keep just the result? Oops, I get an error message, right? Why? Because this is a reference error telling me that, well, that cell doesn't exist anymore. They can't find it. Excel can't find it because I deleted it. So a trick to do that is you simply copy it. So I copy the whole column here, and when I paste, I go to one of the paste options which that there's like a special paste that says paste values only, right? So here I click on the values only, and now you can see when I click on it, I only see a text file. I don't see the original formula. So if I deleted those 2 columns, they're gone, and I still have the output as I want. So there's just a quick trick to show you how to do this. Let's go and do a quick pivot table example as well. So I'm going to go here to that pivot table exercise. So why we would do pivot tables? Well, pivoting is a very powerful and unique functionality of Excel. It allows you to do a lot. It allows you to extract data quickly, organize it, summarize it, and will also allow you kind of to show the results in a different table, because maybe you want to keep the original data as is, right? You can use it for analysis, show trends, decision making, really many usage for pivots. And I saw a lot of people using it, like if you're like in finance, like financial analyst, and if you were like a business analyst and so on. I saw a lot of them throw that data into an Excel sheet, and then use pivot table to drag and drop different formation of
the data and then till they get what they want. So it's really powerful when you do that trial and error thing, that you don't know exactly what you're looking for, but so you keep trying till you get what you want. I remember that I did a workshop for like a group of business analysts on just pivot table. It was like almost like a whole 30 hours just talking details about pivot tables. We don't really have that time to cover pivot tables in details, but you have your textbook and you have those videos, and I also include other videos in Canvas that you can go through to learn more about pivot table. Really powerful tool, really great. So as I showed you the first time, if this was a table, you can create a pivot table from the table, right? So if you remember how we did that, so for example, I'm going to go and insert. All right, I just clicked inside this cell range, and I want to create a table, and I say okay. Just quickly to show you how to do that. And here there was an option that says summarize with pivot table, right? So let's go back to convert to range. But what if you don't want to really create table? You can go and directly create a pivot table out of cell range. If you go to insert, obviously here, you know, it will say pivot table, and here there's a recommended pivot table, right? And if I click on it, kind of Excel give me some kind of recommendation and blah blah blah, and you can see that here it gives me multiple options, like how you want really to display the data. Obviously, it shows something about you have different regions on a column, and then the sum of the quantity on another column. This one like shows the different sizes I have on one column, and then the sum of quantity and so on. So this is really like, even Excel give you like an idea. See that this now it's kind of more meaningful, right? So let's forget about, and you can go to a blank pivot table, but let's forget about the recommended and start to build our own. So I'm just going to click on pivot table. That pop-up window going to show up. It will ask you, would you like to create a pivot table? Of course I do. And it will ask you, what is the range? Well, you know, this is, it already selected the range for me, but if you want to expand it and want to reduce it, you can go and select a different range, right? And you can use an external source of data. Actually, you can connect to a different workbook. You can connect, for example, to an external Access database. You can connect to an external SQL database, and so on. But of course, these things are a little bit outside the scope of this class, so we're not really going to go through it right now. But you know, it's really powerful. And allow you as a business user to be able to access a large number of data, especially in big organizations. So select a table of range, and now you have the option either to create that pivot table inside the worksheet or in a new worksheet. So either an existing one or a new worksheet. So I'm going to keep it in a new worksheet, and then this option add this data to the data model. We don't really want to do that, because this, if you want to analyze multiple tables, like if you had data from multiple tables and you want to include it in one pivot table, you can do that. But we're not going to do it right now. Just going to keep it a little bit simple because some of you, maybe this is the first time you deal with pivot tables. Okay. So once you create a pivot table, obviously create a new sheet for me, and then I have this window over here that maybe it will look different. I kind of normally it's kind of docked to the right. I separated it because normally when I deal with pivot tables, I have a really large amount of data, so I like it to be separated. But you can just go back like and dock it back to the Excel. So let's go to the options here. And not filters.
Oh, it has to be. If I close it here and click on it, field list. Okay, well, let's put it over here. So in a lot of times it will be docked, and there's a way to put it back and get it back docked to Excel. I don't want that. Nope. But it's in the options somewhere. So here, display show, expand collapse buttons, show contextual, classic pivot table. I don't want that. Anyways, not a big deal. You can change how this looks like, and kind of gonna get over this part. You can change how this look like by, for example, you can put the filters to the right, you can put the fields to the left and the filters to the right, and so on. To explain this a little bit, so those are the different fields that I have in my table, and those are different buckets that I'm gonna use to create my pivot table. So for example, I want to put regions on the to make it like a column. So it will be on the rows side. So I put region on the rows. It shows the different regions for me: central, northeast, southeast, and west, and so on. And then I want to put values here. And this is the order, like order number, and I'll put it in the values. And you can see that it is the sum of orders. So the central, this is the total sum of orders I have, and for those different regions, right? So you can do that, and it will give you the sum of orders. So this is the first summary. I have the grand total at the bottom, and I have that second column that shows the sum of orders. What if, for example, I wanted to break it down by size? In the columns I added by size, and when you add it by size, or when you drag and put it here, it adds now a different column for each size. They have 1 liter, 2 liters, 750 milliliters, and then give you a grand total. Right? If I want to like fix the format over here, go home, and then click on this just to make it align. Okay, sounds good. And then you can see that now I have regions here in the first column, and then I have the different sizes for each column, and then I have grand total, and so on. The cool thing is, for example, you can add a month, right? So if I put month underneath region, you can broke down the sales by month, and you can see that each region now has this plus minus button that collapse and expand the data to show you the details. So you can right click on it and say that like collapse, right? But I want to collapse all. So I would say collapse entire field and collapse all of them, and now it summarized data by region. And then if you click on that plus sign, it breaks it down and show you the kind of sub details, show you by each month. The cool thing is you also can, for example, can show, like here is not meaningful, you can just delete it, column label, oops. You can here report. Okay. And then, like for example, those are really not meaningful much. So you can go pivot within the pivot tables, pivot table tools, the analyze, you can remove those. Well, not this is exactly, I want to keep the plus minus. I want those field header to remove them because it's really not that much meaningful for me. And I would put here region. Okay, let's put region over here. Okay, it already exists. What did I call it? Okay. So here, pivot table
name is pivot table 2, but I can call it like sales by region. Okay, sounds good. Right, so this is the main idea about pivot tables, that you can really drag and drop anything and create tables so easily. So if I want to take region back, I can just drag it and put it back here, and now I find that the table has summarized my sales by months, right? And then, for example, if I want to put size over here and then month over here in the column, now I have different sizes on the rows, and then the months, the sales by month as columns. So this shows you how this is the pivoting part of the pivot table, is how flexible it is. What you can do with it is really a lot, and you can simply, you can just simply manipulate it easily. So, and you can find the total quantity, the count of orders, and so on by just dragging and dropping those different fields and creating the summary tables that you want. Here, refresh to refresh the, if you change the source data, like if you added something over here, and you want it to be reflected to your pivot table, make sure when you go to analyze to refresh so that the new data will be reflected. What else? If you want to insert the slicer, like as I showed you in that, when we created a table out of cell ranges, so you can add a slicer by a month, for example. So here I want to show January only, February only, February and March. By holding the control key and just clicking on it together shows February and March. You can see that that window that I used to manipulate and drag things out of and in the different pockets disappeared. Don't really worry much. Once you click on that pivot table, it will show up again. What else? Defer layout update. This, if you click on it, so for example, sometimes when you deal with a big data, you don't want it to change while you are just rearranging the columns and the rows. So say I want to put this back. You can see that my table remained as it is, and I want to put the region back here. When if you click on update, now we'll update it once I hit on it, just because I checked that defer layout update. And you can see that here's showing that funnel here means that there's a filter. Another way to really filter is you can, you can remove the filter and so on. Somehow Excel is not, it's really, oh, okay. So remove that defer layout. Here, if you click on that arrow, it shows you this this menu, let's say as the filter inside the table, show different options. So here you can clear the filters, or you can clear it from this icon as well. Okay, more cool stuff. In the design part, you can change the pivot table styles. You have different styles, and once you hover above it, it shows you the preview of that new style that you want to apply. So you can apply this style and so on. Banded columns or not, column headers or not, row headers or not, banded rows if you want to, and so on. Also can change the report layout if you want to be in the same level, if you want it to be in different levels, and so on. If you want to show in grand totals or not, you can see there is a grand total for the column and a grand total for the row. So if you want to off for rows and columns, now there's no grand totals. If you want to go back to design, I'm sorry, if you want to add for rows only, if you want to add for columns only, so this is for rows only, and then for columns only, and show a grand total at the last row. If you want to add subtotals, cool things to do is, for example, show all subtotals at the bottom of the group. So if you had groups, of course we didn't have groups here. But for example, let's add like, so let's add size underneath the region. Now you have groups. So obviously, and you can see that there is a subtotal underneath. So let's collapse the whole thing to just show you the subtotals. So collapse the whole field. Once you expand one of them, it shows the subtotal over here for you. And you have the option to show the subtotal or not. See, if now I unchecked it, it just disappeared through this shortcut menu. And again, you can show it or not. Over here, you can show it at the bottom of the group or the top of the group, right? So what does that do to me? Show at the top of the group. Somehow it doesn't listen to me. Subtotals, show subtotals at the top of the group. Maybe I have to change the layout. Okay, so here it shows that subtotal at the top of the group. Because I had the layout different, right? Here it shows at the top of the group, and if I click on this, it will show it at the bottom of my group, the subtotal for this group, and then I have a grand total all the way to the bottom. Other things I would like to show you over here, sorry for that, okay, is if you want to add a pivot table, pivot chart, I'm sorry. So let's assume that you want to insert a pivot chart, and it will be very easy. This will be connected to your pivot table. So if I click on this is the cool thing about it. So let's insert this one, the column, right? So I have filters over here, and see, like when you filter now, it filters both the table and the chart for you. So if I click February, you can see that now it's applied here. If I want to click March, it applied here. It really it's cool because it reflects on both the pivot table and pivot chart. And of course, if you click on the chart itself, now the pivot chart tools tabs show up, and you can play with the formatting, the design of it, and analyze. If you want to add a slicer for that chart itself, so for example, I want to add a slicer for the size. Now you have this. So if you look in 2 liters, it shows 2 liters, 750 milliliters, and so on, 1 liter, and it will reflect to both the chart and the table. You can also put the chart, like move it and put it in a separate worksheet if you want to. So you can go to move chart, and you have the option to either move it in an existing worksheet or a new worksheet. Once you hit OK, it will go and put in a different worksheet. Cool stuff about it that you can change the layout the same as we used to do that in workshop 4 with the graphs and stuff. You can switch rows and columns. You can change the color. You can add different elements to it, like like a trend line, for example, and so on. What else? You can clear. You can clear all, which means that you can clear that pivot table and the pivot chart. So now here you can like start it from scratch. You can delete those filters by right-click on it, and then like you can actually click on it and hit delete. It will just remove it. Let's click on the slicer and hit delete and remove it. Again, if I want to show that window where you can insert different fields and stuff, it's the field list. And I click on it, and it's over here. What else? You can change the data source, where it's coming from. You have different options here that you can change the layout, totals, and filters. So here you can merge and center cells with labels. For if there was an error values, what to show, and so on. You have regarding the table filters, if you want to show grand totals or not, if you want to allow multiple filters per field, I'm sorry, for the display, if you want to show the expand collapse buttons, display fields, caption and filters, drop downs, and so on. If you, once you print out what you want to show to the printout, like here, for example, if you want to repeat the row labels on each printed tables, data, if you want to save source data with the file, if you want the source data to be saved with the file as well, if you want to enable show details, and here if you want to refresh the data every time you open the file instead of going to that refresh button. And then here, alternative text. So this was, quickly how to, deal and play with rows and with pivot tables. Sorry, and here, for example, you can add filters. You can simply switch between different formats, different summaries, by just drag and dropping, and really very powerful to draw some conclusions out of your data. I hope this was informative. Definitely we're gonna meet in other videos. Thank you so much for listening.